Hey, we're Attention Trading, a full-service digital marketing agency that helps small and mid-sized businesses with their strategic marketing efforts. From websites, design, social media, and ads, our goal is to create marketing alignment for our clients. You may not realize it, but the majority of businesses lack a solid marketing strategy and plan. That's where we come in. On this show, we talk with business owners, founders, and marketers to uncover the secrets of their success when it comes to starting and scaling a business. This is the Attention Trading Podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast, where we talk with CEOs, owners, founders, and marketers about how they grow, scale, and operate their business. My name is Max Lowy. I'm here with my co-founder of Attention Trading, Steve Alves. Today, we are thrilled to have Kristy Ryan, Chief Operating Officer of Move for Hunger, as our guest. A dynamic leader in the nonprofit sector, Kristy is also a proud member of Chief and the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. Her dedication to combating hunger and her exceptional leadership make her a true inspiration. Let's dive into Kristy's journey and see how impactful work she's doing with Move for Hunger. Kristy, welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's really a great pleasure.
Yeah, no, we're super excited, and obviously, Move for Hunger is near and dear to our hearts. So we're excited to learn more about you as your career, you as a person, and then all the things that you have going on with Move for Hunger. So to kind of frame that, tell us more about you. Tell us who you are. And a little bit about your background, even before Move for Hunger.
Absolutely. I started my career in corporate America. I was actually in insurance. I did property casualty insurance. Before that, health and life insurance, worked for some of the big dogs, and was really unfulfilled in the day-to-day, and decided, gosh, I need to figure out what value is in my life. And left corporate America through the Marine Corps. My family moved to Hawaii for 11 years and found a role with Girl Scouts, an organization near and dear to my heart, as always. I was a Girl Scout as a kid. I stayed there for almost 7 years, got to launch some amazing national partnerships, reshape. I actually got to live on a construction site for 6 months as we built a building, learning how to tie rebar and what all the equipment meant, something I never thought I would do in my life, but got to work with the military every day as we built the STEM Center of Innovation at Girl Scouts of Hawaii Camp Pamalu and the Oahu North Shore. And then once that project was done, I was like, okay, what do I want to do next? And was deciding that I was going to leave the organization, and through happenstance came across Move for Hunger. And Adam just immediately sold me for the mission. It just made so much sense to me. As a military family, I had actually been in the center of emptying a pantry, having to move all my stuff out of the house and going, what do I do with this stuff? In the military community, you often give it to your neighbors because that's the easiest thing to do. But I thought, gosh, how much easier would it be if we had a pathway to make this and solve this problem for people everywhere facing the same exact challenge? And Adam just kind of won my heart, and brought me over to the org. It's been almost 2 years, and I love every minute of it.
It's already been 2 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's flying. Well, that's super cool. I love, I'm a big fan of Hawaii. Love it more than most places in the world. So love that the fact that you got to experience that, because a lot of people don't. I think, like Steve said, it's already been 2 years here, which is pretty wild. Was there, I guess, for leaving the Girl Scouts though, was there anything specific for you as, professional growth, personal growth that kind of inspired you or made you take that jump to move on to the next thing?
It was a combination, honestly. It was a point where I was losing faith in the latest COO to be placed at the organization. And I thought, if I'm losing faith, what kind of leader would I want to be, right? I had filled in 3 different times for the COO role. The only reason why I didn't have it is we moved to Montana. And the CEO was like, I need somebody local. She's like, you would have the job if you were back on the island, right? And I simply said, at this point in my career, I love developing people. I want the opportunity to work and grow. I may not be the person who always wants to be out in front center. I'm not an Adam Lowy, right? But I definitely am the person who wants to make sure the lights stay on and make sure that people have what they need to be truly successful, and looked for opportunities that would let me do that more. I was already doing it. I just wanted to do it a little bit more holistically in my day-to-day.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I will say, I don't think anyone wants to be an Adam Lowe. Just throwing it out there. No, Adam's great, obviously. No, that's cool. That's cool. So now you've been with Move for Hunger for 2 years, in the COO role. Tell us, jumping into that role. The organization's been around 15 years. There's been a lot of ups and downs. You came in and you've been amazing for the organization, but tell us a little bit about when you jumped in, what, day one, what was the plan for you?
So I was very blessed that I had a great on-ramp, right? I accepted the role. I had a few weeks to wrap up what I was currently doing. So in my free time, I was diving in. So I felt like day one wasn't quite day one for me. And I think that's super beneficial when you're taking on a role like a COO. I had reviewed all the financials. I had looked through the budget. I had looked through the org structure, and I had started identifying gaps. And I was like, gosh, there's some things that would make life so much easier if we did X, Y, and Z. One of the first ones was, bringing together a collective of all the resources a new employee would need to survive, right? Like, the terminology alone for an organization is so culturally important. Where are you going to find all your resources? Where are your SOPs? What's the guidance of the org? What do I say an acronym for our name? Is there a short abbreviation for our name? What are our brand colors? So I spent the first couple of weeks putting together a guide that is now used for every new employee, that starts with the organization, and it has all of that information in one central hub. That was, I think, the most impactful thing that I could do for the team. Instead of people having to hunt for things, they have one source of truth. And that was one of the key things I wanted to bring in, was a single source of truth for all of our procedures and operations. And the second thing I did was restructure the board meetings. I was like, we're going to go through and have official board meeting minutes, and we're going to make sure this looks really structured and organized, and set our expectations really clearly with our board, and give them the tools that they need as well. And I think those two things allowed me to clear some cobwebs and open some doors so that people could access the board and ask questions, as well as they had the resources they need to be successful.
And as for the technology around that, what are you guys using to do that onboarding for individuals and to provide that documentation?
I'm going to be very honest. So the initial thing is all in a Word PDF document. Let's be very straight. But we also partnered with an organization called Whistle. And Whistle provides micro learning opportunities, so we can build in a training platform. We did not have a learning and development platform. It's also where we do our employee engagement. We had a platform previously where basically everybody was given a few points every month that they could share with their peers as a kudo. Here you go moment. And what we found was at the end of the month, nobody had used them, so there was a mad rush to give them to their friends. And that was not the core of what we wanted to do. So through the Whistle platform, we are able to put those budgetary dollars in the hands of the leadership team with the instruction you are to be constantly looking to engage with, motivate your team. If somebody's having a bad day, you can send them a $5 cup of coffee. You want to do a team lunch, you can send them all lunch together, and you can jump on a Zoom call and do that. Critical things for a remote world as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was gonna bring up the remote management of it all, right? It's not new to Move for Hunger, but yeah, I mean, as you continue to grow and the team continues to be built out, the talent is coming from everywhere, which is amazing, right? You're in Montana, we're in Jersey and Connecticut, and so as far as you as a leader being remote, is there anything specific that you've been able to, I guess, take from, in-person leadership versus remote leadership? Are you intertwining those experiences at all, or is this something completely, new and you're just like learning as we go?
What's really great is because I worked for Girl Scouts of Hawaii, we had teams that were remote on every single island, and I had in-person teams. So I got the benefit of leading both, right? I led the entire neighbor island staff. I would go over there and visit them maybe once or twice a year, but we're not talking a lot of great FaceTime. And so we built in core time that we were together. We'd bring everybody together once a year. We'd have specialized trainings. We'd do special meetings. We do that at Move for Hunger. For my remote teams, I was frequently doing touch bases with them. I had one-on-one conversations and then group conversations rather regularly so that they didn't feel it's a Wahoo versus us. It's actually a unified approach. And I think understanding that there's a feeling that you're on an island, for lack of a better word, when you're remote, right? You feel so disconnected. And when you see people who happen to be in the same city, our Jersey team versus everybody else, they get to see a little bit more bonding time. So how are you creating ways for people to find those bonding opportunities is one of the core things that you're going to need to do to successfully lead a remote team. It's investing in your team. It's showing up. It's giving them opportunities to speak up and share. And then it's also finding ways for them to just relax and have fun together too. I don't know if you saw last year, but we did a murder mystery party last summer. There were photos all over. We all dressed up. It was virtual. It was insane. We had accents going on and costumes and special backgrounds. We do moments like that all the time.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely needed. It's the cultural piece it's so important, right? To get the team motivated to do the work. And it's such important work. And I think the things that you've been able to implement so far, I think people are noticing and they really do appreciate it from what I can see from the outside. And so it's you're doing great.
I want to ask a question about preference, because I mean the question about remote work has, it's been kind of tossed around, especially over the last couple of years post COVID. Do you have a preference over being in an office versus remote?
I think that if it's a remote world where there's opportunities to be in person and get out in public and see people, I think that I'm very happy in that world. If I was remote and never got to see people, even in Zoom, but I never got to have interesting conversations, I would be a miserable soul. And I know there are people who need the day-to-day FaceTime. I don't necessarily need day-to-day, but I need to talk to people, right? I need to see people.
Yeah.
I think the next Move for Hunger actual event should be in Montana, and I think we should all go there. Just not in fire season.
I keep telling everybody, I've got a huge archery range on my property. My husband and I are both archery instructors. We run an at-risk program during the summertime for kids. I'm happy to teach. I have an entire range. We could teach everybody. I said pop-up tents could be a thing on my property. We could really make this happen.
Glamping.
Team building.
Yeah, team building glamping. Right. Love that. That's cool. Yeah, that is pretty cool. You should do that. So if we're thinking, now knowing that, having the background of Move for Hunger that I have, but not being in the day to day, right? We're 15 years old today. The next, as far as what you guys are planning, are we looking at, 2, 5, 10 years down the road right now? Can we share any of those plans or visions of where we want to be taking this organization and, how we're going to get there?
So I can start by saying we share some things, right? We're part of the White House commitment to end hunger. So that's our big proud moment of this year, right? So we have dedicated a minimum of 6 million pounds of fresh food every year over the next 6 years. So that's part one. The second part is when we look at goal and we're looking at growth, we're not looking at how do we gain 1,000 or 1,000,000 pounds in a year. We're looking if we gained 9 to 10 million pounds last year, we were right in that sweet spot. What does it take us to get to 15? What does it take us to get 30? What does it take us to get 60? So when we're looking at how are we growing and building, we have exciting programs like our charity freight network, which is launching soon. That's where we're looking at activating our logistics and our freight partners and solving this crisis, what it is in the US and in Canada. we're having conversations of what would it look like. We have interested movers and relocation partners that want us to expand into Latin America. How could we do that? What does that look like? Again, we're not trying to solve just one small little problem. We're trying to figure out how do we continue to scale and make the biggest impact we can. We know that the number one food cost that a food pantry is having is transportation. How do we scale our ability to help them offset that so they can get more food and resources into their food banks, which in turn will help more communities in need? So in short, I think that in the next 5 years, you're going to see us swinging for 30 million pounds a year minimum is what I think. If our projections continue where they are right now, I do not think that's an unrealistic goal.
And I'm curious because the goal is to provide more food to hungry families, right? But kind of the opposite is also the goal. Like we want less hungry families, right? Because so they're kind of competing goals at the exact same time. Like how has the whole environment of the how basically let me rephrase that. In terms of how many families are going hungry, like has that gone down? Has that gone up over the last 10 years? And what's the projection over the next 5?
Unfortunately, it keeps going up. We see the numbers trending, and it's a lot of the based communities as well, right? What we know is when there's economic hardships, right now we're facing highest housing costs we've ever seen as a nation. We're going to see correlating people can't put food on the tables. And we're seeing those trends. We're seeing the data that's coming out. When you're talking like 1 in 5 children, scary stat here is 1 in 5 military families. Military is near and dear to my heart, right? And to think that we have people who are in these communities where you don't think there's food insecurity, and yet there is. I was going to have a conversation with an organization that has 2,000 employees. And I said, how many of your employees are food insecure? And they're like, nobody. And I said, are you sure of that? Are you sure? Do you know that? In reality, there probably is a significant portion that are food insecure or right one paycheck away from being food insecure. And that's the piece I don't think gets enough attention. We know the people who are food insecure. There's a lot of people in the country who sit at that level who one wrong thing happens and they become the next food insecure person or family. That's the stat that we need to change. We need to figure out how do we solve that. We can provide food, we can solve that, but we also have to solve some of the root issues that are going on.
That's a really interesting point you just made there. Is that asking some of the companies you guys work with how many of their employees are food insecure? Like even from your position, I mean, that's kind of a question that someone could pose to you, given how your role within Move for Hunger. But to pose that to another, big box store of like, hey, like, we love working with you guys. You guys have donated to us in the past, but are you guys also being part of the solution as well for your, direct reports? That's a keen question to be asking.
And one of the things that we love to do when we're doing events with these organizations, it's not just doing a special event or, having them donate money. We're also educating them on what food insecurity really means and what it looks like. Because you get blinders, right? You think nobody I know is food insecure. But then if you actually sit down and think about it, reality is, if you're a parent, there's at least one kid in the school that your child attends that's food insecure. Statistics don't lie. Like we see that data, we know it happens. Right? So you can't just say it doesn't happen to me. This is not an issue that it's not in my backyard. It doesn't happen where I live. It happens everywhere in every community.
Yeah, it's so true. That's honestly how this all started. I mean, we live it, where we are, we're in Monmouth County, and it's a bubble. We live in a bubble, and you don't see hunger. And when we went to the food bank that very first time to deliver the 300 pounds of food, the stats were wild. The amount of people in Monmouth County that didn't know where their next meal was coming from. And so I was going to say that the transportation, the logistics of it all is so important because it's such a big cost, but the education, the ability to have these corporate partners and just community partners to be part of the educational piece of it all plays such a big role in combating the actual need. And, it's been like that from day one, and it honestly, it sucks that it's still that way, if not worse, right? And so it's always interesting to see like what is being done through the educational piece of it all, through the awareness piece of it all, any kind of specific campaigns that you guys have planned, or that can help tell that story on a larger scale, I think is interesting.
Yeah, upcoming we have Hunger Action Month, which is not just an us thing, right? It's a national movement to bring awareness to food insecurity. And it's something that we spend a lot of time and resources, as do many of our partners in this space, spend a lot of time and energy. And it all is about educating people, right? It's about bringing that awareness. And the more that we bring attention to food insecurity and food waste, let's not forget food waste, right? That's the other big piece of this puzzle. But the more attention we bring to it, the more awareness, you're going to have fewer people saying, that doesn't happen where I live. That's not in my bubble, right? And how am I actually solving this problem?
Yeah.
I actually have a quick story about something about food waste. I was early in my career, I was working remotely, and I was working from a Starbucks, not to point out Starbucks, but closing time was coming around, and I was still working, and I was about to leave. And I just see a counter full of food, right? And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, are you guys throwing that out? Like literally handfuls of food in a black garbage bag. And I'm like, why isn't that going somewhere? They're like, we can't do anything with it. We're literally not. And at that time, they were literally not allowed to do anything with that food. Perfectly good stuff that was just on the shelf minutes ago is no longer viable. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy to me that we can't do anything with that food at that time. I don't know if that's changed since. I mean, that's probably like 15 years ago, 10 years ago. But I don't know if that has changed, if we can recover some of that food.
It depends on the state and the city, right? There's a lot of policies and regulations about prepared food versus something like fresh produce. And we don't typically get involved in the prepared food mix. That, again, there's a lot of regulations, a lot of safety considerations you have to take about when you're talking prepared meals. But when you're talking things like, all of the apples that would go to waste, the pumpkins. Have you ever been at the end of Halloween and all the pumpkins in the bins sitting everywhere? That one always makes me cry a little bit. I'm like, why? We can get that food, and it's fresh, amazing product that can get into food banks and food pantries. Even that short dated, short life item, it can get right out immediately. There's no wait time. Families need the food today.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think, in part of this as well is that, we talk about these big box stores, right? And we talk about all these other industries that are also involved in either food recovery or food waste. And I think the interesting thing about Move for Hunger specifically is when you think about hunger, you think about families, children in general, right? That's the main point of the subject matter. But I really think what we miss is that there's so many industries involved in this process. Like, you guys just don't work with families or food pantries like the name gives it away, right? Move for Hunger. Like, you guys have moving companies, you guys have a real estate arm. Can you talk about some of the other kind of avenues and industries you guys pulled into the fray?
Yeah. Donate your food when you move. Founding principle, right? Our guide starts in the multifamily space. We're talking apartment associations. We're talking property management companies, corporate housing, leasing agencies, military housing, student living centers. They're all helping with food recovery of non-perishable items. We work with farms and gleaning organizations to recover fresh product and get fresh food into food banks and food pantries. You mentioned our movers, but I have to give love to our freight and logistics partners who are also helping us in the food recovery transport space, right? They're helping us make sure we get those trucks. We need a lot of reefers to transport all of the fresh product. So our partners in that space are helping us do that work. And then there's also there's the non-perishable side. So we're working with the CPGs and the large food producers. You're talking cafeteria work, right? The meals that are produced in cafeterias. We're working with industries that are in that food servicing area. We're working with some restaurant industries when they have the bulk product. And then all the supporters along in the way between Amazon Fresh and HelloFresh and all of the other ones in there. We work with a lot of spaces.
Yeah. It's networking at its best. And I think that's it's a perfect segue, I think, into my next question, which is Chief. So I know about Chief. I don't really know about Chief, though. I know you're very involved. I'd love to hear more about Chief. I know it's a more amazing organization, but give us it all.
So I am a member of Chief. Chief is a women executive network. So it is not just anybody. You have to go through a screening process to be invited into the network. And then there's a couple different pathways. The pathway I took was the core group. So I am paired with 6 to 8 women. We meet once a month, and it's basically a brain trust in a way. We talk about a major problem that's come up in our world, and we brainstorm and strategize. We help give resources to one another. We're supportive. But we can also, throughout the month, if something comes up and I've got a finance question and I'm struggling with it, well, guess what? One of my core members is a CFO. I can shoot her a message, and she's my instant ally to answer questions on things that I'm not an expert in, and vice versa. So that's just your core group. In addition to that, Chief puts on amazing in-person networking sessions as well as virtual sessions. So they're constantly looking as a way to develop and encourage networking. They lead topics between female authors, executives of Fortune 500 companies. They bring in thought partners who are just leading in the spaces that they're in. I attended a great session with a food production company that I had never heard of. And they started by solving a simple food issue for culturally appropriate foods and turned it into a massive organization they are today. And I got to hear their origin story and talk to them. And we're still trying to figure out a way for Move for Hunger to work with them because they have different kind of products than what we experience. So it is a way to leverage the power of networking. And it's one of the many organizations I'm a part of. I think that the power of Chief is they also celebrate their members, right? So if you are a Chief member and you're writing a book, when your book is published, they're going to be publishing and sharing out that you've published a book. If you've won an award or received a promotion, they're honoring and celebrating. So you've got this mega power of 20,000 plus women who are behind you, cheering and championing you on. And then they do really cool things like they have clubhouse buildings. I know it seems so kitschy, right? They have a clubhouse. I'm going to go to the Chief Clubhouse in New York when I'm in New York in a few weeks. And it is a place where they hold networking events, but it's also a space where you can work from. So it's a co-working space. You can decompress while you're traveling or you need to get away from meetings. You can also add on a guest. And so you can take a meeting there if you don't have another place and a coffee shop just is not your jam. They give you a lot of resources that you wouldn't have otherwise. And for those people like myself who travel a great bit, having a place of home when I'm away is a great feeling, right? It's a safe space for me to go and just get the things that I need as well as network.
Yeah.
Makes me want to join professional networks, more professional networks.
I recommend them immensely. I said I'm a member of several. I do the most with Chief, but I'm also a member of Fairways by Ella. And Aaron Gallagher, who founded them, is just an amazing human. And they put on very similar in-person, a lot of significant events. They have an app and do a lot of great things. Women Executive Leadership, there's the Women in Mobility, so many great networks. I am the advocate of going to where your people are or finding where your people are and then just learning from them. Ask a million questions. I think it's the great power of networking.
Which I think is a great segue into my next question, which is a big component of my life is ongoing personal education. So reading books, listening to podcasts, reading blogs, whatever that is for you personally, and it doesn't necessarily have to be within your industry specifically. What does that look like for you in kind of advancing your knowledge either in the space or in other subjects that are interest of you?
So I am an avid learner. I was a PhD student. I finished all but my dissertation, which I have 2 chapters for to finish. I just need to sit down and write. But I also believe in developing other. I know it's so simple. Just finish writing. I believe in finding ways to develop yourself. Even so. So this past year, for example, I completed my SHRM Senior Certified Professional Certification. You mentioned National Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. I am an advanced certified nonprofit leadership professional. I believe that there's lots of certifications that you can take that are going to help you grow and develop. And there's also just lots of free courses. I am a personal fan of edX. I do not get sponsorship money from them, but that is my go-to if I want to look for something on the topic. I go to edX. I know a lot of people love Coursera, no hate against them. edX is where I like to go to find some basic introduction classes. And I do that for my team too. So I have a one-on-one with every person on my team, and it's tailored to professional development. We're going through, we're talking about books, we're talking about, resources, what they need. And see, I'm an avid reader. That's just that's my current reading list that sits behind me. So I've constantly have about 20 or 30 books that I'm reading on a regular basis too.
That's awesome. How about as far as like mentorship goes? Do you have mentors? Have you had them in the past? And also, do you act as a mentor to anyone?
I have and currently have mentors. I've had them in the past. How I got involved in sustainability was a mentor when I was at Blue Cross back in the day. VP took me under her wing, and she's like, I want you to go to learn about Six Sigma before it became Lean. And sent me off to a boot camp in Atlanta for 2 weeks. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I love it. I have been so fortunate to have mentors who have taken the time to ask me questions and hold me accountable. And I think that's the art of a mentor. I do serve as a mentor still. I serve in 2 different capacities as a mentor. First, I mentor high school students preparing to enter college or trade school or adulthood, about what that pathway looks like. How do they apply for different programs? What kind of support and resources do they need to be successful? And some of them I stay with through college if they need me to. And then I also serve as a mentor in my professional network. So I frequently get people reaching out to me and asking me, would you serve as my mentor? I have a list of questions that they must answer before I'll take a mentor on, or a mentee on, because I feel that it has to be mutually beneficial. But for my benefit, it is, am I constantly finding new ways to engage with people? Not so much am I gaining something professionally from this, but what am I gaining on that personal level as well?
Yeah, that's fair. I think you want to be able to make an impact for them as well. So it's got to be mutually beneficial in that sense, where you're able to give what they actually need. So that's interesting. And did you come up with like that application process on your own, or is that something that you found somewhere else?
Came up with it on my own. I had a couple mentors early on who would ask me a lot of questions, and I was like, this is really great. I mentioned I take notes and do all this kind of stuff. So I have a notebook that just says mentor thoughts, and I would write down questions that I was asked. And I was like, that's a really great question or way of framing something. And then I just started building it and made it my own. I've shared it with people who have asked, like, how do you go about selecting mentees? And I'm like, this is what I do. So.
Yeah. You're reading a lot of books. You read a lot of books. Is there anything specific as far as the type of books that you're reading? Or is it all personal growth? Is it business development? Is it, fictional, nonfiction? What are you reading? Sci-fi?
I'm not sure I've ever read a sci-fi book. I'm going to be very honest. And all of this is professional development. And it ranges from some food insecurity topics, right? A Hungry Planet is my favorite food insecurity topic right now. To leadership, to communications. I do a lot of communication books because I find communication is the thing that I want to constantly grow and evolve in myself. So anytime there's a topic on that, I'm picking it up and I'm reading it. There's also some books up here that are still on here from my Girl Scout days that I just can't not read. Venture Girls, for example. And then Talking to Strangers is one of my favorite books that I'm reading. I'm rereading it. I read it a couple of years ago. But it, to me, is the art of having conversations with just about anybody. And so I tend to like those kind of books. But no, I've never read sci-fi.
So this is...
I don't think... Maybe Guardians of the Galaxy would, what is that book? I don't even know. There's a book up there that I think might be sci-fi.
It's kind of the same realm as myself as well. Like I find it hard to read something without a benefit to it, other than just pure enjoyment. Let me ask you 2 questions. A book or a few book recommendations would be great for you to share. And B, which I probably already know the answer to this, but are you more of an audiobook person or a physical book person or a combination of both?
Combination. Definitely combination. So I'm not stuck to anyone.
I find... No, go ahead.
You
Go
find
ahead.
what? No, I was gonna say.
Well, I was gonna
Girl,
say that. I'll go. I was gonna say that I find that like if I listen to an audiobook and I'm just absolutely infatuated by it, like I'll actually buy the physical entity of it so that I can have a physical copy of it so I can put it on a shelf and reference whenever I want to. Now you go.
that too. I'm really horrible if it's a book that I love and I find it very insightful. I'll buy 2 copies, one that I can write in the margins of, and one that lives on my shelf to refer to. My daughter has now inherited half of those written in books because she's in college, of course. All right, so Hangry by Mike Evans is a current one that I'm absolutely loving. Be a Perfect Stranger, which is in religious context, but it's basically how to go into conversations with just about anybody and be open to learning cultural differences. I think that's very important. Girl Wash Your Face always stays on the top of my list. I've read it 3 times. I will continue to read it. And then the Disney Difference. So Disney Difference was recommended by our director of development. And I was like, I have not read this book. How have I not read this book? And I love it. So it's also on the top of my current list.
It's awesome.
Steve, you get the benefit.
So
in
good.
the Slack channel, the professional development Slack channel, I frequently drop in book topics there. So just join it.
Oh, I should. I didn't even know that existed.
You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You're welcome. So I have another question.
I'm going to stare at that all day if I look into Slack right now.
You will.
Go ahead, Max.
As far as some current challenges that you're facing on a regular basis, whether it's Move for Hunger, operational, marketing, through Cheat, like what are some of these challenges that you're facing that you're tackling head on that either you need some assistance with or you're just kind of working through at the moment?
I think the number one thing that we face on a regular basis and that lives on my desk almost always is compliance, right? We have to make sure that we're staying in compliance with every single state's individual nuanced laws about fundraising and workers. And because we're national and I've got teams everywhere, I have to know in which state does an employer have to pay a reimbursement for utilities? Montana, hello. And in which state do I need to give an allowance for cell phones? So always up on my browser is compliance websites. So I'm constantly checking. It's why I'm a member of SHRM. It's so that I can stay up to date. I read SHRM publications every single day to make sure that Move for Hunger is never placed in a place that would put us at risk, right? I don't want us to get sued. So compliance, risk management is my other side, although not as much at Move for Hunger, but it is part of my core. I'm always asking, will that get us sued? Will that cause a problem? Will that hurt somebody, right? So those 2 are big ones. And then from just a day-to-day, the state of employment in our country is interesting, right? We posted a job fairly recently and we had very few candidates apply for it and we couldn't figure out the science behind why. And so understanding what we need versus what the market will bear and placing, we try to hire a regional role for the first time and we decided to shelf that role for now. Being very creative in making sure we're attracting the right talent. And then lastly, making sure that our team has what they need. Often nonprofits are faced with the challenge of you can't compete with corporate America salary, right? We just can't. We know that. So what are you doing to offset that and making sure that we're constantly evaluating our benefits and our culture to meet people where the balance will be, where they can accept that I'm taking a lower salary, but these are the things I'm going to gain for it.
Yeah. Love that.
So that brings us to our, absolutely. This is usually the question that we kind of as our capstone for the entire conversation, and it's a little different than most. And this kind of goes back to like when I always have this interest in other people, where they've come from, and if their expectations of how their life has become to today. So the question to you is at 12 years old, do you think that current Kristy would be doing what she's doing now? you think what your current life is now would be what it is, and you think the path in which you took to get here would be as it kind of laid out for you?
No, 12-year-old Kristy wanted to go to law school. 18-year-old Kristy sat down for the LSATs and had a panic attack and walked out of the room. So we'll just start there. I said, I don't want to be a lawyer. But 12-year-old Kristy wanted to be a family law attorney, advocating for children's rights. So would I be where I know? And honestly, I think that had it not been for that VP when I was at Blue Cross, who sat me down and said, you're really good at operations. I'd like you to go do this Lean Sigma course and bring that back. I don't think that my path would be what it is today. And I certainly don't think I'd be living in Montana. I mean, I joke that my husband has Peter Pan complex. He wanted to live in Hawaii when he was 4. We lived there for 11 years. He wanted to be a cowboy when he was like 5 or 6, and he was a cowboy when we first moved to Montana. I believe I have a wandering spirit, so I can live anywhere. That's not a problem to me, but I don't necessarily think 12-year-old Kristy would say, you're going to live in Montana. Definitely not. Probably New York is where I was going to go back to.
So he wants to be an astronaut, so you're going to Mars.
Thankfully, that was not on the list. That was his cousin, so we're safe there.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right, well, Kristy, we really appreciate you taking the time today, giving some insights, some background. You've been such an asset to the Move for Hunger team. So, from someone who's been there from the beginning, thank you. Just keep it up, keep going. Really, really excited about the future of the organization and everything that you guys are doing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for your time today. And until next time, we will talk to you all soon. Thanks so much for listening. Feel free to reach out to us for all things marketing at attentiontrading.com.